What's going on, guys? I'm Tommy and I'm coming at you with an action figure review. Today I'm going to be reviewing Hasbro The Black Series First Edition Imperial Remnant AT-AT Driver from The Mandalorian and Grogu. I have to give a very special thank you to a longtime viewer of Blitz Transmissions and even was a supporter back in the day when I was part of 1313 Podcast, none other than Phantom Menace Dennis. Dennis, thank you so much for thinking of me and going out of your way to grab one of these for me at one of your local Targets. I was looking for some of the first editions for the troop builders for my shelf, and I'm really excited to have one for you now, thanks to Phantom Menace Dennis. The first edition packaging of the mainline wave for Mandalorian and Grogu was advertised to be at Walmart and Target stores. However, on their release date of Sunday, March 22nd, 2026, they only appeared in Target stores. As far as we know, as of making this review, there is no intention from Walmart to ever even get these first edition boxes in, so that's a huge bummer and definitely makes this a very confusing release. That said, I do think that this was a fun little way to get collectors to go out into the wild, go to the stores, and hunt down this wave of figures. I know people in the Blitz Transmissions Discord were sharing all day what they did or did not find at their local Targets. So as I just mentioned, this figure can only be found in store, brick and mortar, at Target locations in the US, maybe Walmart. We'll find out closer to the release of the movie, I guess. As far as the packaging goes, this is the standard style of packaging for the Black Series in 2026 with a little bit of a twist. This has a white box as opposed to a black box. That's part of the main thing that signifies this being a first edition figure. You have your Black Series logo on the front of the box, a big plastic window showing you the figure and his accessory. Over here in chrome, we have a little emblem that says first edition in about 1,000 different languages. Over here in vertical text, we have the character name, as well as that he is number 2 in the Mandalorian and Grogu subline. Down below the window, we have in this blue banner the color for the Mandalorian and Grogu subline, as well as the name of the movie. We also have a bunch of logos and legalese down at the bottom. On this side of the box, we have our mural art here. You can see a very vague backdrop in the background, nothing giving away anything about the movie. You can see Grogu's ear, as the Mandalorian and Grogu themselves are number 1 in this subline. And you can see some really nice art here for this character, and then you can see the character name down at the bottom. On the back of the box here, we have some of the stuff we've already seen, like the Black Series logo, our mural image, which we saw on the side of the box, blown up a bit, our character name, and then just a generic bio about the film in about 1,000 different languages. This bio reads, "The Mandalorian and his young apprentice, Grogu, embark on a thrilling adventure as they travel the galaxy." We reiterate, this guy is number 2 in the Mandalorian and Grogu subline. Down below that, we have all our legalese. Guys, please don't feed this action figure to your babies. On this side of the box, we have our wraparound window, our wraparound banner, and our Black Series logo. On the bottom of the box, we have even more legalese, and on the top, nothing. That about wraps it up for the packaging on this guy, so let's get him opened and we'll check him out. Alright guys, here's our AT-AT driver out of the box. Don't worry, I'm not throwing away the first edition box. I'm definitely holding on to that. But before we take a look at the figure, let's first take a look at his one accessory he comes with, that being a blaster pistol. Now, unlike previous releases of the AT-AT driver, we do actually have some weapon storage here with a holster for this pistol. We'll show that off later, but this is the SE-14C, a standard issue Imperial blaster pistol. We see this on all kinds of figures as far as Imperial ranks go in the Black Series. This is done on a black sculpt. There's no painted detail or weathering applied to this blaster whatsoever, but it is a solid sculpt and I don't really have any complaints about it. Good for a sidearm. Alright, now let's take a look at our Imperial Remnant AT-AT driver. So I will say there are differences between this costume and the original trilogy Imperial AT-AT driver. This one is a lot closer to what we see in Star Wars Rebels, which did feature a little bit of a different design for these AT-AT drivers as opposed to the original trilogy look. However, in addition to that as well, we do also have quite a bit of new tooling on this figure. So this figure is going to feature a lot of the newer scheme of articulation for Black Series, as opposed to the dated articulation that the original trilogy look has. Let's take a look at the figure up close here. So I kind of want to look at the helmet first. So if you saw my recent review for the Target exclusive Imperial Remnant Stormtrooper, then you'll see that one of my big positives about that figure was the application of the weathering on the armor. The way that they applied the weathering there is a lot better than what they've been doing with the digital dot matrix weathering application, and this is that same way. Look at that grime just caked into all the grooves on the top of the helmet there. That looks awesome. Lots of a brown color, almost like dirty snow and mud from these guys oftentimes being in snowy conditions. You can tell that the weather is aged and that it's unkept. I love the way that they've done this. As far as the helmet goes, you'll notice that the size of the helmet is a lot smaller than what we're used to in Episode 5, The Empire Strikes Back. However, again, this is just the nature of Star Wars costumes. Things change over time, and I do believe that this was an intentional decision made for this character, for him not to have such a bobblehead as far as the helmet goes. In the way of the actual sculpt of the helmet, it does still look very similar to what we see in the original trilogy, other than the size of the helmet. You can see that at the top of the helmet, they have painted on a black stripe here, and then they do have printed on Imperial cogs. I do have another version of this guy, the standard mainline release, and the printing is just a little bit off center on one of the sides here. So do keep that in mind if you're hunting for these guys in the wild. Sometimes this printing will be a little off. A little bit of silver here, a little bit of red here, a little bit of silver in the middle. Lots of little details painted on this figure. You can see some nice glossy black for the visors there, and then you can also see some black and gray for the details just outside of the visors. As far as the frown goes, we've got some nice black and gray and then some red in the center. And then at the chin filters, we've got some black, some silver, and some red. You can see again all the grime and weathering that's caked into the grooves here. That's another thing that the kind of wash effect of weathering can do that the dot matrix can't. The wash can really cake itself in and really make it feel like it's a much more natural looking grime effect. As far as the back of the helmet, we have some black paint app right here, and then we have some red stripes on these gray pieces. They go into a little bit more of a gray that goes in these tubes all the way down to the control box. These tubes, as you can see, are very, very malleable. I can move them all around, and I'm not going to have much issue with them getting stiff or ripping off of the control box when we're moving the figure's head around. So that is great to see. As far as the carapace goes here, you can see the little outer carrier for this guy is very, very plain, and that's completely fine. You can also see it's separated here, but it is glued and fastened at the center of the chest, and then the same can be said in the center of the back, but it is a very pliable, thin plastic. One thing I do notice is that the pieces of shoulder armor, which are fastened with an O-ring system to the figure, are actually completely white. These are not weathered at all. They're very stark white, especially compared to the rest of the armor we've seen so far. This, I will say, does track, because if this is Imperial Remnant, they're not going to have a lot of equipment on hand, so maybe some stuff is newer, and it's kind of this hodgepodge of newer and older armor. The chest box has a lot of nice paint apps here. You can see, again, all that weathering with that grime built in. You can see lots of different colors, like some red, some black, some silver. You can even see some of the buttons up on the top of the control box are painted as well. That's really nice. And then on the back of the armor as well, you can see this is also a lot cleaner, and then they do have some black paint apps here on the center of the back. Overall, a very, very nice execution for this character. As far as the armor goes, I really like the inconsistency of the detailing for the weathering. I think it makes this feel a lot more realistic. Taking a look at the undersuit here, it is just done in a pretty plain gray color. However, there are lots of wrinkles and folds sculpted in so that it catches the light and it gives it a little bit more depth to the sculpt. The gloves look great. They have a little bit of texture and detail to them as well. You can see a seam that is sculpted in there, and then the hands are sculpted nicely as well. We have a trigger finger hand for that right hand for that blaster pistol. Then at that left hand, we have a little bit of a faux trigger finger hand too. You can also see on the left glove here, there is some more paint apps here on this little sculpted piece that's not on the right glove. We do have some dark and light gray there, so that's really cool. When we get to the belt, that is a thin, pliable plastic overlay. However, again, it is fastened to the lower part of the torso. You can see how pliable the strap for the holster is here. This appears to be done in a very stark white sculpt, and you can see all the black along the belt, which goes all the way to the back, is all painted on there, and you can also see that the gray for the holster is painted as well. It's a very nice look, and again, this does match with the shoulder armor as being completely stark white. Then as we move down to the pants here, you can see we have just the standard looking flight pants. You can see this guy does lack the flight straps that the original trilogy AT-AT driver figure has, so that is a big difference between the two, and I believe the way the boots are sculpted is a little bit different as well. You can see we have sculpted in here some big cargo pockets on the front of the pants as well as on the fronts of the lower leg. Then as we move to the back here, you can see a little pocket on the back of the left leg that's sculpted in as well. Once again, just a lot of nice sculpted folds and wrinkles in the clothing, just to again give it that nice depth of texture. And then we get to the boots here, which are also really plain. They appear to be a slightly different color, a little bit more of a dull gray as opposed to the flight suit here. And you can see that they have sculpted in all these straps for the tops of the boots, and then the bottoms of the boots have just a nice little stripe that goes down there, and you can see the outsides of the boots are sculpted in, no tread sculpted in there, but we do have some peg holes in the ankles there. And as far as that goes, this isn't the most intricate Star Wars design. I still think it looks really cool though, and it's nice to get a new AT-AT driver out in the Black Series. Now let's cover articulation on this figure. So being a newer figure, he does have a lot of the newer articulation. So at the neck here, we do have a dumbbell joint at the top, so one ball joint goes into the top of the neck, one goes into the head. There's an additional ball joint at the base of the neck as well, so we should get lots of range of motion out of this. So this trooper is able to look down quite a bit. He's also able to look up a little bit as well. You can get some good tilt out of that head. You can also get some good right and left, and as you can see, especially on the right and left, you can see that the tubes do not hinder the movement at all. We do have some butterfly joints which are built into the torso, and you can see that those have some really nice range both forward and back. The overlay on the carapace does not hinder that one bit. We also have a hinge and swivel at the shoulder, so the hinge is going to get us well past that 90-degree mark. That's great to see. Most Black Series figures only get us to about 90 degrees on that hinge, and then we have a 360-degree swivel. While the shoulder armor can be moved separately from the shoulder, I will say if you're making it that whole 360-degree motion, just keep that shoulder armor with the arm. I do recommend that just so that we don't risk warping and maybe stretching and breaking this plastic piece here. This figure does have a hinge and swivel at the elbow, so you can see that hinge is going to get you well past that 90-degree mark, which is great. We also have a swivel at the top of the elbow. A great added piece of articulation on this figure is an extra swivel at the base of the glove. That's great to see. And then of course we have some ball jointed wrists or roly-poly wrists on this figure here, and that is a great added range of motion because these are omnidirectional. They are not limited to one axis of movement like the hinge and swivel wrists are. Very interesting here. So I was checking out the articulation at the torso, which seems to just be a ball joint that goes about midway down the torso, and that gives you some good decent range here. However, I did notice if you lift up the carapace here, check it out, there is a peg hole there for a piece to go into. I'm interested to see if maybe this is some clever foresight for an upcoming figure, and maybe we'll get a different figure that will need that little piece there. Very, very interesting, but well hidden on this figure. As far as the hips go, we have another ball joint, so that's going to get you plenty of range, and this is the new modified ball joint that Black Series is using. So Black Series seems to have done away with the cut for the thigh swivel on their newer figures, and they replaced it with a modified hip joint, which should get the same motion as a thigh swivel would. You can see that this one does give you some pretty nice range in and out. You can get that lower leg to maybe 30 degrees out. I like for it personally to get to maybe closer to 45, but it is what it is. At the knees, we have another hinge and swivel here, so that hinge is going to get you to past the 90-degree mark. That's great to see on these single jointed hinges. That's better than most Black Series figures. And then we have a swivel at the top of the knee as well. Another great thing about this figure, he does also feature a boot swivel at the top of the boot there, so that's going to help us where we lack a little bit on that range at the hip joint. Then of course at the ankles, we have the Hasbro Classic, the forward facing pin for rocker, as well as a hinge which gets you just a little bit of forward. You can see that the sculpting of the boot does hinder that just a little bit, and we have some decent back as well. So overall, pretty standard articulation for what we get in the Black Series right now, and a pretty great looking figure as well. So let's get him posed up. All right guys, so just to show off the blaster pistol in the holster here, you can see that that slips in like this. You're going to want the scope to go outside on the front of the holster. You can see the barrel of the blaster is going to be peeking out from the bottom of the holster, and that does pass the shake test, sits in there very nicely with friction. And here's a nice basic pose, maybe an add attention pose for our driver here. Very nice figure. Of course, fitting the blaster pistol into the hand is very easy as well. You're just going to work that grip into the hand there. Interestingly, I seem to be having a hard time fitting the trigger finger into the trigger guard here, so it's going to sit just outside it, but the trigger finger can't really sit in the trigger guard. And here's a nice blaster holding pose for our trooper here, kind of walking forward with the blaster outstretched. I still think it looks good in the hand. But with that, guys, that's going to wrap it up for this review. This is a good looking figure. Again, I'm really happy with them going back to more of a wash style to the weathering on this figure as opposed to the dot matrix digital weathering. I think it just gives a lot more of an authentic look. The way that it sits in the grooves and the crevices of the sculpt, it looks a lot more natural. I think this is a solid figure release, and it's got me excited for the Mandalorian and Grogu to see these guys on screen. But with that, guys, I hope you enjoyed this review. If you did and you're not yet subscribed, subscribe to Blitz Transmissions. I've got awesome Star Wars content coming out all the time. If you're an ARC Trooper in my Patreon, you would have seen this review early. If you'd like access to early content, monthly giveaways, and other awesome benefits, the link to my Patreon is in the description below. Become an ARC Trooper for just $4.99 a month. If you're a fan of the reviews I do here on YouTube, or you just want to support the YouTube channel more directly, you could also check out my YouTube channel membership, Rancor Battalion, for just 99 cents a month. It gives you access to exclusive badges, priority replies in my comment section. You get to check out all my reviews early here on YouTube, and you get to vote on what I review next for the channel, just like the Patreon members do. If you'd like some Blitz Transmissions swag, you could always head over to the Blitz Transmissions Armory over on Printify. Link to that is in the description below, as well as links to my Discord and all my social media. Guys, I hope you enjoyed this review. I'll catch you for the next one, and may the Force be with you.
Breaking off. All units, fire at will. Squad 2, pick your targets. Too many, Captain. Watch your stabilizer, Gold 6. Anybody, cover me. I got 2 vultures on my tail. You've got to hold them here. Watch your left. I can't shake them. I'm hit. I'm hit. Where's our reinforcement?